Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today and attending our webinar. We might kick off the session now. My name is Rabnott, and I am a Bluechip MYKI product manager. We're very excited to partner with MYKI to offer their password management solution to the channel. And today we have Chris and Rob from MYKI to talk to you about how their MYKI for MSP console can help you build out your service offerings. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. The lobby will be muted during the presentation, but please feel free to ask any questions throughout it, and these will be answered at the end of the session. The session will be recorded and made available to all attendees following the session. And we also have a lucky draw prize of a Raspberry keyboard and mouse, and the winner will be announced via our social media platforms today. Thank you for attending. My details will be shared via email, so please get in touch if you've got any questions or you wish to learn more. And I will now pass you on to Chris to start the presentation.
Hi everyone, and thanks for that introduction, Dale. Before we start, those Raspberry Pi 400s, if you've not seen them before, it's such a cool thing to play with and to mess with. So good luck with the draw for that. I'm really pleased to be here today to talk to you a little about MYKI and introduce the MYKI product to you. I'm going to be doing a very short bit at the beginning, but then the main meat of the presentation is going to be Rob, who's going to go into more detail about the product. As Dale mentioned, we're quite keen for questions, so if any questions do come up, drop them into the questions window, and I'll either try and answer them as we go if they're easy. Otherwise, what I'll do is, if they're difficult questions, I'll pose them to Rob live on camera later in the presentation, just to add an extra level of jeopardy. So before we start, a little bit about me. My name's Chris Tate. I've been with MYKI around a year now. Before that, I was with Datto, and before that, I ran an MSP business. So hopefully I understand the MSP business quite well and sort of know what it's like to be an MSP and the kind of challenges that we're facing currently as an industry. Trying to keep our clients secure in kind of a world which is becoming more and more dangerous. So any questions that you've got for me in particular, you can always drop me a line at any time to chris@myki.com. Also sort of really pleased to be joined here by Rob McGrath, who's the Sales Enablement Engineer at MYKI. Now that title doesn't really sort of do him full justice. He's kind of one of our sort of main technical experts and kind of the go-to guy for any kind of technical query about MYKI. So we're going to be in good hands with him today going through the product. And again, any questions you get in the future, it's a good email address to make a note of, just to drop them a line if you get any queries. I wanted to very quickly start, and I don't want to make this a sort of death by PowerPoint, but a very little introduction to MYKI, because it may seem, because we've just effectively moved into the Australia, New Zealand region, that we're kind of brand new, and that isn't the case necessarily. We've been around since 2015. When we kind of took a different approach to password management. So most password managers on the market leverage cloud storage. So it's a master password concept and the passwords are stored in the cloud. MYKI doesn't do that. Rob will go into more detail about the infrastructure, but MYKI doesn't work that way. MYKI is kind of a private cloud or peer-to-peer network. We launched the product in 2017 as a consumer product, which is still very popular actually in the consumer space. But we started to get inquiries around 2018 from MSPs, mainly on Reddit, saying we're using this product at home, we're using it for our own users. It'll be so cool if there's a way of us using this in our MSP business. So that obviously got the powers that be thinking at MYKI. And then what happened is MYKI for MSPs was created. And that was launched at DattoCon in Paris at the end of 2019, which was one of the last in-person events that we got to go to, little did we know. So that was kind of the official launch of the product. So we've kind of been running the MSP product for a little over a year. We're really pleased to be working with Bluechip in this region, and we've just literally signed probably sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we're very new with Bluechip, but so far the engagement's been sort of really good. So we're really confident it's going to be a very fruitful partnership for all concerned. So again, I don't want to dwell too much on this because you must see slides like this all the time, but password compromises are in the news all of the time. You only have to kind of open a news article to find another site broken into, or weak passwords being sold on the dark web and then stuffed against multiple sites used for credential stuffing. So it's not new. We're seeing this all the time as an industry. I guess what's new now, what's beginning to happen, is our users are starting to see it as well. So it's not only the tech press anymore, it's started to go into the mainstream media. So more and more people are becoming aware of this, certainly the issue with passwords. So I think that maybe end users are starting to think, well, maybe it's not such a good idea to reuse passwords. There's a stat somewhere that end users are probably expected to remember something like 100 passwords, which is obviously impossible. And so what's happening is they're reusing passwords, and reusing passwords for reasons that I'm sure you're all very aware is sort of really, really bad news, mainly for the credential stuffing potential to allow those passwords to be used against different applications going forward. Also, there's been quite a low adoption of multi-factor authentication. This is something that I know that as an MSP community, we're pushing quite heavily to our clients. It's quite difficult to get them to take up on that. And sometimes the reason for that is it's difficult, more passwords to remember, so they're starting to use spreadsheets, post-it notes. You can see there the example, millions. Every year the survey comes out, this was from April 2019, but every year the survey comes out and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is still the most used password. So what we're trying to do is to help you give tools to your users inside your MSP, because this is a product which you can use yourself, and it's a very good use case for using internally within your MSP for controlling passwords and sharing 2FA for multiple services that you may use. But also it's a great service to offer to your clients. So we see the kind of progression of using this product is maybe what the route most people would take is to use it internally within their MSP, and then over time transition to start to sell it onto their users as well, and then you manage their password vaults for them. So it's a great value add. It's a sticky additional service that you can offer to your clients. It's also a great way of generating additional monthly recurring revenue, because it's a per user per month service that you can add on to your clients. So we think there's quite a lot going for it in terms of a solution. I guess with that, what everyone's probably wanting to see, if you've not already seen, is see it in action. So I'm going to hand over to Rob now, who can do a demonstration. If I can do this right. Rob, you should now have control.
Do this. I'm going to unmute and make sure I select the right screen this time. And you should see a Windows sandbox. Hello, everybody. My name is Rob McGrath. I am the customer and I guess success manager or sales enablement engineer or any other title you want me to be. I've been called way worse things than either of those on a regular basis. So I'll be happy to walk you guys through MYKI today. What I'm going to be showing you is really three of the main prongs of our product, which would be the desktop app, the browser extension, and also the what we call MYKI Mini, which is a very helpful tool for MSPs, especially when it comes to remoting into different assets for that. So I'm going to be doing this all in here, and I know there may be questions that come up along the way as well. So please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to try to do our best to tackle them as we go. So first and foremost, I'm going to bring up my desktop app. Now we do have a desktop app available for all the major platforms. So you have Windows, you have a Mac OS, we have Linux as well, and it depends on the flavor. If you ever get into setting up a Linux machine, feel free to reach out to support so we can make sure you have the right dependencies for that as well. But also when it comes to mobile, we have iOS and Android app. And what's unique about MYKI in many ways is how that data is actually stored. So you've all been around password managers. Many of you probably use them internally. I know I used to work for an MSP prior to MYKI, and I know that at my MSP, we happen to have a particular password manager we use with many of our customers. And at the end of the day, it wasn't really a standardized approach, and many of the customers had it, and they just happened to have it as a product that we were more or less forced to support. And what we found was oftentimes it just didn't really meet and just connect all the dots that we really wanted. And a lot of it was also very nerve-wracking because of where the data itself was stored. With MYKI, we are very firm believers in privacy when it comes to your data. So the data is always stored locally on your devices. And that does oftentimes happen in other other solutions. However, with our solution, it allows you to not only have it locally, but through a unique kind of pairing process, which is, in this case, since it's on a VM that's going to be blown away later on, this would not necessarily a normal environment. But if I had another application, like let's say a mobile phone or a work, tablet or another computer, something like that, that I wanted to add, I could simply type in a parent code here, and the app would actually pair and push my database to that other phone or other device. And from that point forward, the devices would then stay in sync. So it is both offline, but we do have kind of this hybrid model where the devices will then sync across, basically the changes will sync across both devices or multiple devices. So there's a very nice approach, but at the same time, if you're ever curious where it actually comes up, you can always track down your database and see that we store your data here. That's it. You have several subfiles on there, and this is actually where your data will live. So as an administrator and as an admin, your data will reside locally with you. And we also believe in the privacy of your data as a user, and it actually being able to be separated from your work account. So while many other password managers will have both enterprise solutions and personal solutions, they don't really play so nicely together. So sometimes you'll have passwords that you'll save, and they'll be isolated to a work account or a personal account. And in this case, you can actually have both in the same kind of instance, and your privacy will always remain intact with your personal passwords, but work passwords can be shared very efficiently from the admins, and you still have the same enterprise functionality that you would have in many other solutions, but the ability to pretty much divorce yourself from that company should you, or if you were to let another employee go, or just move on, the company passwords then be revoked from their devices, so you don't have somebody walking with company credentials, or if you were to leave a position, you wouldn't lose all of your personal passwords that happen to be saved in your solution there. So that's enough, I guess, about where the data would be, and you're probably curious about what this actually looks like. So the MYKI app is typically locked by a PIN. So your PIN is used to unlock the app, but your encryption keys are actually separated from this entirely, and they are unique to you. And when you are actually asked for entering your phone number, that's where we actually hand the encryption keys to your device to encrypt your data locally. Again, we never see the data. We don't even have a way of storing your data. So therefore, you're safe. Your data is safe with you and protected with keys that are unique to you and nobody else. So the data will then be here in my desktop app, and I actually brought this over from a CSV right before this call. So this is all data that was freshly added to my enterprise vault, but we have the capability of storing passwords, payment cards. Actually, I'm going to expand this. Payment cards as well. So if I was to want to save a personal credit card for autofilling into the different login fields that would come up on the web, I would be able to do so as well. Secure notes, I always kind of compare secure notes to those random text documents that you save on your desktop when you are going to, I need to know this, whatever script I just ran, or the security answers to that account that I just created or whatever. And you write it down on that text document, and then you forget about it 8 months later until all of a sudden you need it again, and you realize to delete it. That's what you should use secure notes for. So you definitely will want to keep that, and you can put some plain text in here that you want to protect and then encrypt it behind MYKI. Now you may have seen this 2FA section, and you might have also noticed on some of the passwords as well that there was a token attached to these. And this is because we actually have a TOTP 2FA authenticator built into the app. So you can actually attach 2FA tokens from the various accounts that you would have on the web and actually attach it directly to a password. So you can use it for autofilling purposes, and especially in the enterprise kind of environment, the ability to share an admin account with 2FA enabled is very helpful. I can tell you at my MSP, we had a real fun time trying to figure out how to share 2FA tokens with Office 365 accounts back when they had created the mandate that you have to have 2FA enabled on admin accounts. It was a very interesting day, and it was usually resulted in us just yelling at each other across the room for the tokens, or frantically texting somebody who had the Authenticator app set up to approve that login that just came in. But thankfully, due to the usefulness of this kind of feature and the shareability of those credentials, you can actually attach that 2FA to a credential and have it shared with your team, with it still remaining encrypted and protected, but also being conveniently shareable. So very, very big feature. I'd say probably this is the most most popular feature amongst MSPs because of just how painful this is to workflows to not have that 2FA token available. And it's also how I even discovered MYKI as a product. It was a very happy day when I found out that this worked. So ID cards and identities will let you store things like driver's licenses, insurance cards, passports, all these things for future use as well. Same thing with identities, mainly for address autofill, more or less for personal use. And again, the paired devices section I had showed you earlier will actually show me exactly where my data resides. So I could see if I had an iPad or an iPhone or Android device or whatever else was here, that's where my data would live. And I can technically revoke that access. Oh, it's not going to show me because I don't have another device. But in the top right corner, I could disconnect that app and effectively kick it off. So for instance, if I lose my phone, I can make sure that it gets nuked the second it goes back online to unlock, and it will actually go and get that sync that, hey, you know what, this device is no longer safe, and basically we will kill the data on that. In addition to that, I do want to typically show you the browser extension because this is great. The data is there and that's awesome. It's fantastic. However, when I actually go to use these accounts, that's where, I guess the rubber meets the road, I suppose, where you want to see this in action. So I'm going to use a private window just because it's just annoying to deal with cached credentials oftentimes. So let's go to probably the most popular one, should be office.com. So I have my MYKI enabled in incognito mode, and I'm going to sign in here. If my VM's going a little slow, sorry. And let's check demo. And as you can see, it also detected the login field and has a whole list of these. A little fun fact, this is actually searchable. So I don't, obviously you guys will probably have a ton of these credentials for this particular website. So I'm going to type in demo global and it'll actually filter out just that one. And I'll go through username, password, and drop in the 2FA. And I can click verify. And now I'm actually in. And this can apply to any number of other accounts. Obviously, things like IT Glue, a very common one would be, whatever you would use. I know in the US, we use GoDaddy for a lot of our domain management and helping our clients manage their websites. A lot of these accounts will have these TOTB codes, especially your PSAs will also have them. So Autotask, ConnectWise, these tools all have a 2FA token attached to them. And that same behavior of autofilling the username, password, and dropping it in all in the same couple steps will be pretty much the same across the board. Now our extension is pretty much right here as well, reflecting all the data from my desktop app. Oops, clicked outside of it. And you can easily find my credentials. We're about to have a facelift for this actually very soon, so it's going to be even nicer. And we have a built-in password generator. So when you guys go to log in on a new page, it'll actually let you either one, which I do recommend starting to change those passwords from what you probably have out there now. And I always remind people, if you can remember your password, it's probably already been breached. And I can definitely attest to all my passwords that I know have all been breached. So I've actually just gotten in the habit of logging in and going on random sprees of logging into accounts, and enabling 2FA, changing the passwords, and saving them with MYKI. And MYKI will detect these changes and actually let you save them directly to the vault. And I can even add passwords on the fly to my vaults, either personal or company use. If I just want to add one really quickly, I can change this to a company and just move it there. I'll actually get an approval, and this goes in, and now it's part of my vault. So that is more or less the extension. You can also bring over from any number of other solutions from here. So this is mainly for importing for personal use. A very big popular, there was a certain other manager out there that just made some big news that we've had a very large bump in traffic about how to import passwords from this particular other solution out there. And I would say this has been, I've been telling a lot of people to go to this section of the extension to import passwords because that's a very popular thing nowadays to move. And when you come in, if you have your data in a CSV, you can bring it over from any one of these solutions and you'll be good to go. And your data will be added to your MYKI app. Now, in addition to having your passwords available for usage and for your own personal use, next thing you want to do as an MSP is easily share this with your team, which oftentimes if you don't have a good policy in place, there's usually a spreadsheet. I've heard it referred to as Big Bertha, where there's a large CSV or Excel on some file server. You just gotta hope that it's been password protected. And if it's not, which 9 times out of 10, spoiler alert, it is not password protected, you'll wanna make sure that you can pretty much migrated to a solution that will let you share it with your team. So in this, as you saw, I just clicked on this briefcase over here, and this brought up my MSP actual portal to manage my MYKI vault for my team. So this is broken down into a very similar kind of organization, where it's the left column over here to navigate all the different sections, and this right side to show me the actual data that I'm going to be working with. So in this case, I can always go back to my desktop app to view what's actually unique to me. But if I want to go back to my MRUD portal, it's right there. So in this vault, I can have, again, passwords, just like in my personal account, I can have passwords. I do have a dedicated 2FA section, so I can have 2FAs and help manage those passwords under those 2FAs for my passwords as well. Company credit cards, if you ever were in that pinch where you were sick of giving your help desk guys your credit card to go buy this router on the fly, and they don't bring it back to you on your desk or something like that, this is a great opportunity to basically share it with them without actually sharing it with them. And you can also add very different varieties of policies and to protect that data. And again, secure notes to share things like maybe important. I've even seen this in MSPs using this as an opportunity to share important IP addresses for when you go on site. There's nothing worse than going on site and having no clue exactly what the IP was for that printer you went on site to go ahead and fix. Is a very handy way to be able to store that. And again, these passwords were all brought over from a CSV. So I had actually just imported this in here, and I can click on any one of these. So I'm going to pick one, for instance, that demo global admin account I had just used. I can come in here and manage the permissions to be as general or as granular as possible. Now, again, my environment's kind of tiny and doesn't really help. But if I had other users in my account, I can actually add them in here as well. I can create groups. So let's say I want to add this to, I want to have a help desk group. Or if I had a folder, and let's say I had global admin accounts. Oops, it would help if I clicked in things. And I can actually add it to this folder and make it so the permissions, and I recommend kind of approaching our permissions in a similar fashion to something like SharePoint. So you generally avoid individual assignments, and you drop passwords and everything into folders, and you assign users to groups, and then you connect those groups to folders, and you're good to go. But this is very, very straightforward and easy to see why this password, like who has access to this password and why. So I could see that I have direct access to this password because I actually imported it earlier, so it's from me. But if I wanted to assign it to folders or groups, I can also do this where, for instance, this hide password access, I can actually toggle this and click save, and I can usually hide this password from myself as well. I'm actually going to remove it from this group. So now I can actually have this password hidden, so I don't even know what this password is when I go to autofill it, but it'll just drop it into the browser and prevent me from ever being able to copy, paste, or write it down on a Post-it note, like physically, which I have seen definitely in the real world, and we'll be able to do all that without ever having the user know about it. Another helpful part of MYKI is the security policy section, which will allow you to essentially create a conditional access. So you can really choose any one of these three. You have a location-based policy, which will allow you to use a mobile device to create a geofence. Now in this, I think my VM might be blocking my basically the map software for this. So normally this will show up with a map and it will default to New York City. So you can always change that. Can also create a time-based policy, which is virtually identical to an Active Directory time-based policy. So you can make it so the passwords are only accessible in this small window. Very helpful if you're working with teams like a NOC team that you only want them accessing items overnight. Or also my personal favorite, which is the IP address policy, where you can actually set the public IP, for instance, for a site that you have, so all users would have to be able either to connect to the VPN or be directly connected to the network for this particular site before they can actually attach to these credentials, which is going to be very helpful whenever the apocalypse is over and people are back in Starbucks and airports and all the wonderful non-secure Wi-Fi's that they can be now forced to go on VPNs to get to those accounts that you normally traditionally can't protect with conditional access. So Office 365 accounts, yeah, that's great. You can kind of protect them, but many of the other accounts you cannot protect. So this is a great way to lock that down. And again, most of these sections I've covered over that are over here are also in these top tabs. But again, you can easily manage users. You can import users as well from any number of solutions here. So if you have users in IT Glue or your ConnectWise or Autotask, say PSAs, you can bring over them for there. The very common request is bringing them over from G Suite or Microsoft Azure AD tenants, and you definitely can log in as the global admin account for that particular tenant, import the users, and they will all be brought in with an email invite to join this company. In addition to this, we can also go, I'll bump down here to reporting. Now, my data is not going to be the best because it is just this weird demo environment. But you will be able to break down who has access to what, get a quick snapshot of, for instance, how many passwords do you have? What's the most common account that you're using? You can see the login graph, which, man, we had a 100% increase in logins today. Pretty crazy. But also companies analytics, so you can see the same thing for your customers, which at the moment I do not have any customers. A security dashboard, which will show me and this is usually the most eye-opening experience for many MSPs and their customers. As they bring in their data into MYKI, they'll see very quickly that the shroud of security that they thought they had was not really all that secure to begin with, and they'll see a whole lot of red, which means it's a weak password or it's at risk, or the most common one, which will be this purple icon, which means it has been reused. So all of those are kind of cardinal sins, I would say, of passwords when it comes to being an IT professional. So this is a lot of times when people realize they have to roll up their sleeves and start doing some pretty drastic changes to their data very quickly. So this is a helpful way to break this down. You can even see who's the most secure user in this case. So it's WDAG utility account apparently, which is me. And in addition to that, we have our audit logs, which pretty straightforward, shows you when items have been accessed or brought up. So you can track down when admins are assigning things or manipulating any kind of permissions or touching things on the portal. Same thing could be applied to your companies. And this is always fun, the real-time dashboard, which will show you an actual breakdown of where you are locally. And in this case, since my virtual machine does not like this website, apparently, it'll just show a gray box. But oftentimes it'll show you where you are. And you may even see some logins happening in the middle of the ocean. Don't worry, your technicians are not socially distancing on a yacht off the coast of Ghana or anything like that, which is typically where it'll show them. It'll actually just be because there's no GPS location. It puts them in the GPS center of the planet. So that is a very common question we'll have. So why is mine showing in the ocean? Nope, you're not in the ocean, don't worry. But all that is great to get you set up. But a lot of times it's, okay, well, how do I get over to MYKI from any other solution I have? And thankfully, we have a whole host of integrations that we work directly with. So for instance, like IT Glue, I'll say IT Glue, ConnectWise, and Autotask, we have the ability to import your companies and have them in additionally. You'll be able to import them, and it will create company vaults for each of your customers as well. Particularly with IT Glue and IT Portal, you can also import passwords from them because they do have the capability of storing passwords inside those vaults on those respective solutions. So you'll be able to import the companies, but also map those companies to match the IT Glue instance. And at that point, they will be able to import passwords for them as well. So it's a very easy kind of smooth transition from one solution to the other, and you'll be able. Sorry, my headset apparently just turned off. Yeah, so basically you'll be able to transition directly from one solution to MYKI and move your passwords over into basically a vault that you can share from here. ConnectWise and Autotask, we do have integrated billing as well. So I also was the procurement guy at my MSP. So I was the unfortunate soul billing, spending 15 minutes billing for an Ethernet cable that cost 30 cents and we billed for $1.50, and was that guy filling that in. And I can tell you, manual billing is no fun, but if you have this connected to your Autotask or ConnectWise instance, you'll be able to set up custom billing where you can charge your customers and actually have the license count from MYKI reflect directly back to the billing side of both of those solutions, which will save you a ton of time to prevent a wasted amount of a lot of time, man hours being wasted on just something as simple as billing. So you can get back to actually running your business. But a lot of these other solutions will help you bring in your passwords as well and get this set up. And it's super easy to bring in a company. So for instance, I'm going to create a manual company since I don't have my integrations turned on in this, but I can just simply create example company 1, let's say they're Google and they're just working under a secret name. And you can actually dictate whether or not the licenses are going to be assigned to them. So I can say 0 licenses, in fact, and I can also go to, like I can dictate the manager domain, which would be mine, and turn on white labeling as well, and just click save. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to create a unique, basically, vault for them. And you'll see it quickly spun around, and this is a whole new vault for this customer that I can either use for internal use if I want to put my passwords in here. I can even invite my customers into here so they can start using this as their product as well, and they can start adding their passwords. It's really a super flexible kind of platform for that. So if you wanted to even hand them their nice own little bubble, you can even give them their own separate instance and it not actually cost you any additional money to have 2 companies instead of 1. It just comes down to how many licenses are being used by users in that company. And you as an MSP do not consume additional licenses to create those companies. But ultimately, you have the ability to have that multi-tenanted approach, to have vaults with unique storage, so it's all stored locally. You as an administrator function as that node to keep the data safe and synced, but also the ability to open this up to your customers, which is traditionally very painful for an MSP to introduce a password manager to their customers, because password managers are not typically multi-tenanted, and if they are, it's not the most smooth kind of setup. And with MYKI, you can quickly switch between them, and I can say, okay, I want to go back to my MSP, get back to working in my own stuff. If I want to create another customer, or even just help deploy this to my internal team, this will basically make it so I have MYKI ready to go for any of my customers. And when it comes to reselling, we do have a reselling structure available where you can easily, due to the MSP partner-specific pricing, you can make it so that you can build in a healthy margin as well. So you're not just offering password management as just as a service that you just aren't really making any money on, which unfortunately many other solutions kind of put you in that position, because many solutions out there are readily available for the exact same cost that MSP can get them, and we have channel-only pricing available to you guys. I almost glossed over this important part of our portal is our breach monitor. Now, our breach monitor, we are developing and building out our own database to monitor data that's been leaked on the dark web. We actually get data from the dark web and integrate it into our database on a weekly basis. And this is updated to reflect that kind of data. So this is pulling from that. It compares, we let you compare a couple characters of your hash against the data that we have in our database, and we will flag it for you if we see that there's a match. So if you do see something here, while technically there could be a false positive, I 100% recommend erring on the side of caution and changing these passwords as fast as possible, because many of these will be out there. Now, mine are all dummy demo accounts, but you'll probably want to go out there and change it, because yes, many of your passwords probably have been breached, and you don't want to be the one left holding the bag, as they'd say, when I guess all of it comes back and starts crashing down. So definitely take advantage of the breach monitor. It's baked directly into the enterprise portal, and it will give you company-specific breach monitor. So if a customer brings in their data, when they have their instance, it'll show data specific to them as well, and let you basically have actionable items for you to fix and show your customers that you're making, leaps and bounds of progress in helping address their data protection and their just overall security stance in the world. So more or less, that's I guess the desktop app and the enterprise portal. But definitely, what's a very handy solution that is 100% a unique approach from MYKI is MYKI Mini. Now, many other solutions will happen out there. Let me get my keyboard shortcut. Since you guys are on a keyboard similar to the US keyboard, it is Control Shift apostrophe on the US keyboard. And basically what this will let you do is bring up MYKI Mini. And now MYKI Mini is kind of the jack of all trades when it comes to dropping in your passwords and using autofill behaviors in multiple solutions and multiple situations that traditionally are untouchable with password managers. So all browsers typically have a browser extension for the password managers. And yes, you can use JavaScript and do all kinds of crazy voodoo to protect and drop in those passwords and login forms. But if you need to, expand that mailbox for that one guy who refuses to ever delete any email he ever receives ever, and you have to log into Office 365 and PowerShell, you're not going to be able to use a Chrome extension to do so, and it's really annoying to have to copy and paste passwords all the time. So if I'm going to bring up this, and I'm going to drop in a PowerShell session, for instance, I can bring in MYKI Mini, and let's say I'm going to bring in this account. I can drop in, press enter, And oh, actually, it looks like it took forever to load. It might be going super slow. Yep, mine is spazzing out. Basically what this will do, drop in the username and password. And what you noticed, it's hard to kind of tell here, but it actually pressed tab as well. So let's say you're using RDP to get into a file server or something like that, and the previous technician left the username logged in, well, or it shows username and password. It'll actually type in the username through keystroke emulation, so you don't have stuff just hanging out in your clipboard, but also keystroke emulation of the username, presses tab, goes to the next field, and then we'll actually drop in the password from there. So you can simply press enter and move along in your day. This definitely has a personal use. I use MYKI Mini every single day when it comes to logging in and out of things like Spotify. My wife and my kids use my Spotify as well, so I will have both Colombian music and Elmo at the same time, apparently, and it is very common for me to have to log in and out of my Spotify all the time, and I hate copying and pasting my password. I just bring up MYKI Mini, drops in the credentials, and I just press enter. But this is very, very helpful for using those in those very unusual kind of situations or very common situations, especially with RMM tools like Data RMM, ConnectWise Control, and solutions like that to get out there and drop in your credentials in those sessions when you're connecting to a server which doesn't actually pay attention to whether or not you have a browser extension. This is very, very helpful, and it's a very nice tool to bring up. Not only that, you can also access your 2FA tokens, secure notes, any of these, you can pull it all up, and it's basically at your fingertips, so you're not stuck like scrolling through forever. And also, again, that very handy search feature, I can type it in and filter out exactly what I'm looking for and be able to find my credentials without ever thinking about it. So that's more or less the desktop app. I would love to highlight the mobile app. It's a little hard to do a screen share of that, but the mobile app, again, very straightforward as well, and you could definitely add this to your account. I highly recommend having all three, all three aspects: the extension, the desktop app, and the mobile app deployed for your instance, so you can have full control and full access to your credentials wherever you're using them. And that's more or less MYKI for MSPs. And I'm sure we have some questions. I'll be happy to hash through them as they come up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks, Rob. I mean, I've only got 2 questions currently, so if you get
Cool.
any more while I'm reading this out, fire them through now. The first one, I've even tried to answer myself, Rob, to save you some effort. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but Adam was asking about the browsers that are supported, and I went with basically the Chromium-based browsers, so Edge, Chrome, Brave, all of the Chromium-based browsers, plus Firefox that we support. And we do support Safari, but it works slightly differently. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, so that's more or less it. So Chromium, while some of the more, like, I guess Opera is, it's on our page, but they're all kind of like the Chromium-based ones behave a little bit differently. So occasionally they don't behave as nicely as regular standard Chrome. But yes, all the major ones. The only one that's strange is Safari, which I know as an MSP, you're probably not super surprised about that. But back in macOS Catalina in August, and right before Catalina was released, Safari was updated, and they more or less, Apple completely flipped the extension ecosystem on its head, basically, and many of them were completely broken. So we had to retool our extension to work properly with it, and we work with autofill, but it does not have this drop-down menu. So in many cases, especially in an MSP environment, for personal use, it's fine. But for MSP environments, I definitely recommend one of the other browsers. It's much more friendly to managing passwords and admin them as well.
Cool. And the other question was around import of data, I guess, from KeePass, saying that it doesn't support folders in the CSV file. And if there's a way around that.
So currently we do not support a import of those folders in one, like basically to do it all in one fell swoop. That's a very great question. It is definitely feedback we've had before, and I 100% think that'd be very helpful. The easier we can make it for you, the better. So we definitely regularly have conversations about this with CEOs and product management team. So I'll be happy to definitely bring that up, because it is, the easier we can make it for you to do almost like a like to like kind of switch, the better. So currently, I'd say, unfortunately, currently, no, we don't support that, but we do allow you to bring it over, and you could recreate those folders. But yes, I will be happy to request the ability to make it easier for you.
Cool. Another one that's just come in is around the importing from Passportal. Is that possible?
Yes, so we do have it, and I'd say the moral of the story would be to, if you can get it from, let me see, integration. Let me do. Sorry, I need more coffee. My brain is not firing on all cylinders tonight. So basically, when it comes to the import, we would come from a number of solutions. Yes, Passportal, it's basically a CSV. They would give you similar story if they do have folders in there. So it would not necessarily bring it over. I will tell you, if it's coming from LastPass, I guess to save you a little bit of headache, if you are trying to test the import from LastPass, I 100% recommend getting the Universal Windows app or even Mac app installed. If you quickly Google that, it will. The reason behind it is they actually export your data in a CSV, or sorry, an HTML file that you'll have to later convert to CSV. So definitely get the Universal app. It'll help you export directly to a CSV file. And even though it says it's exporting to CSV, it doesn't actually without the Universal app. So, but all these other solutions basically come over from a CSV, with the only exception, and this is a very rare one, is this JSON file from NPass. And unfortunately, I've seen it export broken JSON files. Usually it's because of some random character in one of the passwords that would effectively terminate the JSON file a little bit too early. So you'll want to make sure your data, and again, I guess another little life hack, before you bring over your data into MYKI, definitely I'd recommend cleaning it up in the CSV. It is significantly easier to clean up that data, separate out your personal data. You may have seen that notification that came up here when I click import password. It says, oh, you're about to import, enterprise accounts. If you import your personal accounts, including like your checking accounts or anything like that, you will likely not want them to be available to your team, so you want to do them in a separate CSV. So a lot of these other solutions do not differentiate that in your export, so do clean up your data ahead of time and make sure you're not giving your technicians a nice little raise by giving them free Netflix and access to your checking account.
Cool, right. Another one that's just come in. I think this is around structure. So the question is basically, if we are looking after clients of larger and smaller sizes, how would you recommend setting up the structure per client, as well as us to manage them from a central portal, especially for clients that don't have a central location to share passwords?
Mm-hmm. So MYKI's flexible enough to kind of meet the needs of really, and every MSP is kind of different, and every market's also different. I'd say what I've noticed about the market over there is very similar to the US, and the approaches typically are very similar. So I would say I do recommend creating vaults. My default recommendation would be to create a vault for the companies that you use to manage them. It's nice to have the data segmented so you don't have this massive vault with thousands of passwords in there. And also, it's nice to be able to hand the customers, should you lose them, or like either you fire them or they fire you, be able to say, you know what, here you go, it's great, take your CSV and hit the road, and be able to do so. So now the next question would be, okay, some MSPs, and this is kind of a minority, I'd say, is some MSPs like sharing their credentials with their customers. You're like, you know what, it's job security, you trust me, I trust you, there you go. I always like to remind MSPs that every one of your customers has that brother-in-law, neighbor, son, whoever, that air quotes knows IT. Finally, I can use air quotes, I have a camera on today. Air quotes knows IT, and therefore they can come along and fix that pesky file server for you guys. And sure enough, they'll come in and nuke it all while using your credentials, and there's no paper trail to show that. So with that in mind, many MSPs don't want to have this kind of shared instance. So if I was coming here and invite their users into this vault, they would also have access to it. So what I've kind of seen MSPs do that is they're more happy with would be creating a managed company as an option for them. So for instance, example company, and I will do example company internal. Whenever I'm doing a live demo, I can never spell or type, so I apologize. But let's say I want them to have 15 licenses, like their whole team wants to be part of it. I can actually do this, give them this instance potentially, and really it only matters if you make them an admin. If you never make them an admin and treat this as truly a managed service that you want to manage 100% and you do everything for them and they are very hands off, then yes, more power to you. You can just ignore this. But if you do want to give them some sense of autonomy, which many businesses want that, you would then create this as a separate vault, hand them the keys, make them an admin, give them obviously a tutorial how to use it and bring in those passwords, and then they can start using it for their internal stuff, mainly for the stuff that you probably as an MSP could not care less about, like their social media accounts, their random kind of CRM or like internal accounts they have to use for everything, and just help them and just give them the tools. And that way you can benefit from the licensing side of things, but also give them the autonomy that, you know, should they need your help, you can always swoop in and assist them, but otherwise they're going to be able to manage their own lives and have and basically have training wheels, basically, because you can give them a nice little bubble to work in as well. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. Right, a shorter one, I think, hopefully. Is there any Active Directory integration to capture changed passwords like Passportal?
So we do not currently have, and I'm assuming it's on-prem, like to detect some kind of event like that. We do not currently have any kind of on-prem Active Directory integration, but we do allow you to use Azure AD to not only bring in users. There is a kind of beta feature here where you can actually log in. I'm not usually. I do recommend this is kind of like a more difficult thing to show because cache credentials. I know this might surprise you. It's pretty miserable to work with in Office. So demo global. But you can actually use MYKI to handle those password resets directly from the portal. So for instance, this will go in, ask me to approve logging in as this account. It's probably going to go through this. I'm hoping, being that it's in a VM, it's not going to do something strange. But basically, it doesn't work nicely. I can just go. We do actually are able to actually access in the portal. So if you do in a web browser, so if you do ever get adventurous and when you use MYKI in a web browser, as long as you have the extension, you can go to portal.myki.com and do this. And I'll go to my MSP, for instance, and bring it in. My fans are kicking on, so my computer's going to go slow. And I can add this service. And this is not exactly the same solution you're looking for, but it's close-ish. And this will allow you to bring in those users and detect if they're in here. So you can see that these passwords actually were already part of MYKI, but let's say I want to nuke Brad Welch's passwords. I can do change password. Are you sure about this? And this will actually send the password reset signal to Office 365, and it will actually change this user's password with what MYKI suggested. So if, for instance, Brad was a MYKI user and he calls me in, and I actually, in kind of in my breath, like in onboarding call, I would go over this kind of stuff with you, but while we're here, why not? So we'll basically, this is a nice mechanism for even handling password resets because it's typically a kind of a blind spot for many MSPs. And you'd be able to use this, say, hey, Brad, your password expired, or your password, you forgot it, or something like that. Here, let me check your MYKI app now, and I can actually see that it was this crazy password right here. And now that he's going to get this password in his MYKI app, and he can now use it to log in. So while we don't have an on-prem kind of password detection of those changes, at least at this point in time, that we don't have that kind of detection of the password changes, we do have the ability to nuke the password from the portal to allow you to update the item and also enforce it that way. So it's definitely a very helpful tool to handling something that's traditionally awkward and difficult, those password mechanisms, which normally is, here, let me reset your password. It's password 123. Please don't add just an exclamation point to the password, which more than likely they will. So yeah, I've done many password resets and only found out later on that I could easily get back into that account because I knew what they changed it to by adding an exclamation point. So this will help you kind of avoid that as well.
Great. A couple more quick one. Well, they're all flying in now. I'll save Dennis till the end because I think that's a great one to end on. But another one that's just come in is, what about websites that might have additional logon fields, such as an account number, for example?
Yes, that's a common one. Typically outside of the US, for some reason, we don't have very many fields or many websites that ask for like account number or like site name or something like that. Right now, we do not have any kind of ability to add those extra fields, but it's definitely been communicated to that before. And ultimately, we are constantly updating. In fact, we just had an update for our extension I saw as of yesterday on Chrome. So we're always updating our extensions as well. And as part of that overhaul, that's coming in very soon. We'll be able to, go from there and use that as the framework for future changes. But I definitely agree that'd be very helpful to avoid the constantly trying to remember, oh, what's the domain site, for, or the account number for this particular site. I would recommend probably in the short term, if you have like additional info, I'd probably drop that information in here so it is readily available. While it's not auto-filled, you can actually get to it from here and say, okay, additional info, copy and paste. So definitely, I'd say it's a Band-Aid in the short term until we can actually add that kind of capability of maybe mapping custom fields to data in the MYKI app.
Cool. The next one I'll try and take is around licensing requirements. It says after the trial, it's minimum of 25. I mean, that is generally the case. We try and work to a minimum of 25 licenses, but if you've got specific requirements and it's less than that, then speak to Bluechip and we'll always try and sort of accommodate any sort of license numbers that you've got. We want you to be successful. We want you to deploy MYKI. So anything we can do to make that happen with Bluechip, we'll try and do that. But yeah, you're correct. It is, generally speaking, it's 25 users minimum. And then the final one, unless anything else comes in, was we are wanting to sell this to clients as a password manager for them, as well as a place for us to use MSP passwords. Is this a use case for us?
Totally. So the benefit, I've even seen some MSPs as they're migrating and they want to be very careful to migrate that data, or they've signed contracts and have a solution in place that they're trying to get out of over time. Many of them will actually come in and use this automatically. And this is as simple as this. So these actually would be separate companies, and you can either, one, obviously at this point, so example company internal in this case would be just like a customer, and this is something I can 100% hand to them, even if I don't have anything in the MSP vault or not using it internally yet, because that does take, I know as having worked in MSP, it does take quite a while to move internal stuff and to get everybody bought in and migrated and transitioned and actually using it daily. But when it comes to your customers, oftentimes if they approach you, that's a perfect window to drop it in and say, hey, perfect, here you go, here's a solution we have in place. You can spin up that vault. It'll be literally seconds. I can just do, example 2. Select the number of licenses here. If you have a PSA, you can actually, again, connect it to like an Autotask and ConnectWise. You can actually connect it directly to their contractor agreement. So this license count will match the product count on their agreement or contract. So you don't even have to think about the billing. You can set a custom cost and custom pricing for their customers as well. So you don't even have to think about how much to charge them. All in all, basically, it will start, all the dots will start connecting, and you can just hand this to them. And once this is created, this will actually be the opportunity for this. Only thing I need to do once this vault actually spins up is the next step would be get users in there. So I just simply import users. You can invite them manually, and they're going to get invite links. So if I was to invite myself, which it will not work, because actually if I just use .co, I'll basically get that invite on my email. I'll join the company and basically consume a seat. So you can build teams up in a mere couple seconds, and from that point on, you have now a product that you have access into and the customer has access into, and it's kind of this definitely very advantageous kind of relationship where you have a tool you can easily support for both internal and customer usage, which is kind of difficult, especially in the password management scene.
Cool, great. Well, I think we've come to the end of the questions. Oh, hang on, one quick. Do we need to have a pool of licenses before we assign them to customers, or is it billed as usage?
So you will, so the licenses, once, and when you have your license count of 25 or higher, you can add licenses ad hoc. Like you don't have to have 50 or 100 licenses or whatever, and then go from that. It is basically like that pool from the top down. So if I go to manage companies, I can see, okay, I have 26 of 26 licenses assigned in this case, but that's because I've had, I have 10 here and I have one used in my MSP and I've invited people. So I've already kind of started consuming licenses, but it is basically a top down pool. So you'll have the total amount for the MSP, and then it gets divvied out to the different companies from that point forward. And you can change those license counts on the fly. So for instance, if this company is like, never mind, I changed my mind, I can set this back to 0. I can even delete this company, and the data will be gone at that point. So you can add licenses. There's no necessarily commitment. You don't have to pay. Like that's another painful point with many MSP focused password managers is you'll have to prepay for a year, which, as you know, MSPs do not bill annually. So you are stuck with a bill for, you know, a LastPass bill of $600 for this one site because you decided to deploy it to, you know, 10 users, paying $600 up front. You're not going to get a client to pay $600 right up front for a password manager. We are understanding of that, and we try to be super MSP focused when it comes to how we operate, how we think, and how we develop. So that is a very, very, I guess, understated strength in our point of where you can do a monthly commitment and you can adjust licenses on the fly, because that's the business of being an MSP in reality.
Okay, one more. I'll give you one more. So is the organization of folders like a hierarchical tree? So for example, servers, Azure servers, AWS, and then you can sort of organize it in a hierarchy.
So folders, I'll say we are in the process of kind of refining this a little bit. So the way it is in the portal, you'll see them, and I would probably approach them more like tags. So the reason I mention that is technically an item can be part of multiple folders. So if I have, let's see, O365, like these accounts. So let's say I go back to my item folders or global admin accounts, but let's say I want to make O365. And I want to add demo global. This item will not be duplicated. So that's where it's going to be different from many other solutions, where the way folders work typically are like files folders. So they will be, if you have an item in one and you copy it to another one, for it to be, you know, usable in both locations, it's duplicated. With MYKI, it's essentially linked. So if I update this global admin password, it will change across the entire platform or wherever it is. So again, as far as that goes, no, I would recommend instead of, I guess, relying on that hierarchical kind of subfolder to like child folder to parent folder or grandparent folder, probably more focus on less specific hierarchical folders, but more generic, and kind of like focus on the group's access to those folders as well, to kind of allow for varied access to them. But ultimately, the way MYKI and many solutions out there, and just computing in IT in general, is moving is a lot more search focused. So naming conventions, you'll get a lot of mileage out of a naming convention with a solution like MYKI, where I can just simply type in a couple letters. Many times MSPs will have a customer code as well. So like the first couple characters of, you know, a customer, like ABC or, you know, Acme or GCC or whatever else, like whatever codes, I'm trying to think of a couple that my MSP used. Those codes will oftentimes be like the prefix for a file server's name or domain controller's name or something like that. And with that in mind, if you add that to your passwords, which there's some, you know, Excel voodoo, if you concatenate different columns together and do all that, you can actually deploy naming conventions super easily, which oftentimes will negate a lot of the need for many of the folders, because you'll be able to find stuff very, very quickly just by typing ABC or you know, Acme or something like that, rather than clicking through several subfolders. So definitely recommend naming convention, but that is a good question about the folders though.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks for the questions, everyone. Before I hand back to Dale, just very, very quickly, I think that, you know, the next stage really is, I think, as we mentioned about the trial, is the Bluechip guys are kind of up to speed to help you with the trial if you want to go down that road. We've got a whole bunch of collaterals, a lot of videos and things that Rob's created on the Partner Knowledge Hub that, again, can help you with onboarding and getting started guides, that kind of thing. And above all else, we're kind of here to help. So if you do get any questions, then we can be very reactive to try and sort of help you out with them. So I would really appreciate your time. Thanks for all the great questions that came in today. I'm sure there'll be a recording of this made available afterwards if you want to go and listen to it again. But on behalf of MYKI, Rob, and myself, thanks very much. And I'll hand back to Dale.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. As Chris mentioned, a copy of this recording will be made available. Please let us know if we can assist with anything. Bluechip, we do have a dedicated pre-sales engineer assigned to MYKI, so we can help with the onboarding process, as well as deliver personal, individual demos with you guys. So please make contact if you've got any questions. I think we'll end it there. We will announce the winner of the keyboard and mouse later today. But thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.